Hey everybody, Meinke here from MLI.com. Joined by Nate Atkins. We're at CenturyLink Field in Seattle, where the Lions' memorable season has come to an end, 26-6 at the hands of the Seahawks. I really enjoyed covering this team, Nate, and all these the comebacks, and Matthew Stafford really coming into his own. But in the end, they were a flawed team with not enough defense, especially against the run. So no running game for themselves, a lot of key injuries, and against a really good Seattle team, it just wasn't enough.
No, it wasn't. And we saw this team sprint out to a 9-4 start, but they just haven't been good enough against playoff teams. And you saw it again here in the playoffs. They just felt like they went down 7-0 early or in the second quarter there, and they just were hanging on forever. And they just didn't have it. This was a comeback team against teams that they were kind of more on the level of, and we just saw the past few weeks the comebacks didn't happen because they're just not there yet. So it was an impressive season. I was only here for half of it, but. They're just a little short as we learned.
It was a fun team. I had a lot of fun. They did things that you hadn't seen before in the NFL ever.
Right.
But they did it against the Los Angeleses and the Phillies and the other teams like that of the league. When it came to playing good teams, I think the Lions revealed themselves to be not a good team. They did not play. They didn't score a touchdown against New York. They got killed in the second half in Dallas. Didn't score a point there.
Mm-hmm.
Come back home. No, just the Hail Mary in the second half against Green Bay, and then tonight no touchdowns whatsoever. Just 2 Matt Prater field goals. I mean, they just weren't on the same plane as some of these good teams, and I think that reveals where the Lions are at, especially with the condition of their running game. The defensive line was absolutely run over by Seattle. I mean, it was just they're just two different teams at two different stages, and I think this season has revealed the Lions to be. It was a step in the right direction, but they're certainly a long way from actually playing meaningful and winning meaningful football.
Yeah, for sure. And they were one of the more healthy teams in the division this year for most of the year, but the injuries they had came to the wrong players at the wrong time. You saw they could have really used Theo Riddick these last few games here. They didn't have that outlet kind of guy. Some of the offensive line issues, that's a tough thing to go into Seattle and deal with. Now the thing you come back with is other teams are dealing with this. I mean, Seattle didn't have Earl Thomas, the most important player in their defense. They didn't have Tyler Lockett, who stretches the field. So it just shows you the difference. Other teams have better depth. Other teams have other areas they can win with. The Lions had a sort of specific, certain players that they played through. And once those players went down, they were a different team. And I think you saw that tonight. They just didn't have enough playmakers out there. It was hard to find anyone on this offense that really was going to step up and make a big play. And, it's one of those things where they put so much on Matthew Stafford that when his fingers started to have issues this year, that's just where it kind of came unraveled, I thought.
I agree. To me, that was the point at which everything turned for the Lions. When he was healthy, he was able to make crazy things happen. It's like there was 3 games this year where their win probability sunk to 1%, and they were able to win those games because of Stafford and some crazy stuff and just pinpoint accuracy. And we've seen bigger yardage numbers from him before, but nothing in terms of this efficiency. He's still, even despite his rash of turnovers, of interceptions at the end of the year, he still set a career best for a full season for interceptions. I mean, he played a lot better, but once he hurt that finger, his completion percentage went down by almost 10%. His passer rating went down by more than 35 points. I mean, he was not the same quarterback, and we saw that out here again against Seattle, against a really a good defense even without Earl Thomas. They had their struggles, but Stafford just wasn't able to take advantage of it. He just wasn't as sharp, and that's what we've seen from the Lions. Once he did so much for them, and once he wasn't at his best, they really fell apart.
Yeah, and in this one, I thought he played reasonably well, but his receivers gave him absolutely no help today. I mean, I counted at least 4 or 5 drops. They were either third down conversions, splash plays. Their second leading rusher was Zach Zenner, and coming into the year, if you heard that, you knew they would lose a playoff game like that. So I think that was story number 1. And story number 2 was, or maybe even was bigger, was they couldn't stop the run at all. Thomas Rawls ran for more yards tonight than the Seahawks running back has ever done in the playoffs. Think about all those years with Marshawn Lynch, for that to happen when all week long they talked about we've got to stop the run, we've got to stop the run to have a chance. They didn't stop the run. In the end, they didn't have a chance.
It's crazy because the last time I saw Thomas Rawls in person, he was not playing for Michigan. Back when I covered Michigan, now he's out here doing things Marshawn Lynch never did. It's a pretty crazy story. Yeah. With the Lions, though, adding to their problems was their lack of discipline They had four really costly personal fouls, including the one by Tavon Wilson there at the end, roughing the passer. But Haloti Ngata, he's played 10 playoff games. Anquan Bolden's played. This was his 15th playoff game. They combined for 3 personal fouls at really silly times too, particularly with Bolden. These are the guys you expect to lean on for their playoff experience and their discipline and stuff, and instead they were the guys losing their heads. I wasn't there for Anquan Bolden, but I saw his quotes after the game. It looked like a bunch of excuse making to me, about we didn't know what they were calling. We expect people to call stuff against us in their place, and that's just baloney. I mean, that stuff always happens. You just got to play better and more smart and smarter and more disciplined, and they didn't, and that really cost the Lions in this one. People will talk about the pass interference or whatever it was in the end zone and how it should have been, offsetting penalties as it should have been. That was a blown call, but that's not why the Lions lost. They had so many other opportunities, but they dropped passes, they committed penalties, and that was their undoing.
Right. I was there for Bolden, and it was a little disappointing for him to be kind of not as forthcoming about his role in it. He apologized for his retaliation, but he didn't really admit any fault on either of the penalties. And that's a guy that you count on for better leadership than that, better accountability. But I felt like talking to the other guys in the locker room, a lot of them, they realized they didn't play well enough. There was sort of this, we had calls go against us, but we messed up a lot. We dropped passes. We committed some of these penalties on our own. We didn't stop the run. You heard that over and over again. So I think these guys kind of realized we just flat out weren't good enough this final month of the season. And there's some of that is injuries. Some of that is, tonight has been a couple calls. But at the end of the day, they didn't execute well enough to beat really good teams, especially on the road.
That's what we got for the 2016 season. It's over. It was fun, but ends in more disappointment. And it's still they're still stuck in one playoff win over 58 years.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, the challenge in 2017 becomes figuring out how to advance. Because I think doing just this, where there's no championships, no playoff victories, it won't be enough anymore. The bar will be raised. We begin to delve into that stuff on Monday when Jim Call was expected to meet with reporters. Players will have their locker room clean out. We'll begin flipping the page into 2017. It's been fun, Nate. We'll be all over next week. For Nate, I'm Kyle. We're M Live. Thanks, everybody. Keep it right here.